Welcome back to another episode. It is hard to believe that we are on episode 10 already of the Playful Wise Woman show. I love, love receiving notes from you all when you tell me what episode you're on. It's been such a joy to get to know some of you over on social media as you've found the show and followed. So please always consider dropping me a note. I love hearing about your takeaways or your aha moments or how a story has impacted you. I'm excited as we shift into the next 10 episodes, bringing in more guests, both experts, clients. Really beautiful lineup for spring and summer of 2025. It's just been such a fun journey and experience creating this, playing with this idea of having a podcast, trying it out, figuring out what I do and don't like. It's something that was on my wish list in my business for years, and I just wasn't ever quite ready. It wasn't the right time. Little paralysis by analysis, some overthinking, and it's so exciting to be here and doing it now. And I look back and I'm like, why did I wait so long? But sometimes that's what we do. And sometimes we just have to step back and take some messy action on it and go for it. I'm also really grateful and shout out to my podcast production team over at Jess Escalona Media. Phenomenal team. I even have my water today because she was reminding all of her clients last month for my episode, around when my episode came out, to both her clients and her narrators to make sure we're drinking our water and staying hydrated. So just some fun tips for y'all there. But on today's episode, I want to share a little bit more of a peek behind the curtain into some things I'm doing or have been going through and navigating, because I think it resonates with a lot of other business owners, regardless of what stage of business you are at or of growth that you are at. And I want to just kind of share a little bit of a story around that and then some takeaways that I've had. So if you follow me on social media, you may or may not have noticed, and that's the interesting part. Some people noticed, some people had no clue. But as of this recording, a week ago, last week, I decided to step away and take a break from social media for the week. And I've done that before. I've done it, I like to do that in the summer. I did it over winter break when I took time off in the business. But the difference this time was it wasn't a true break in the sense that we were still putting out content, my team and I, content that I had already created. They were still scheduling that for me. The difference was a personal difference and a energetic boundary that I really needed to put in place and hold with myself. And that was, I actually took all the social media apps off of my phone last week. And it was a lot harder to make the leap than I thought. It's something I've toyed around with in the past. I was feeling pretty burnt out. Burnout isn't quite the right word because I know I've had true burnout before, but I was just feeling very exhausted. And I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. And was just kind of like dragging and dreading some things. And we all have those weeks and those moments. And I think that a lot of times we judge ourselves for having those moments. I see that a lot with my clients of beating ourselves up a little bit for not being able to push through, not being perfect, not being on all the time. And then the reality is those moments of overwhelm, exhaustion, whatever it is, they're a red flag to be aware of. And also what I encourage my clients to look at them as an invitation to pause and explore and figure out what the underlying thing is here. And for me, in order to do that, I had to pause how I was operating social media. I could feel that I was exhausted, brain fog, nervous system. And I knew, because I know my body really well, and I do a lot around that. If you've listened to some of my past episodes, I talk about my PCOS journey a little bit, my health history and all of that. I knew it wasn't anything like that. I had kind of that under wraps. And so we pinpointed the reality was, and I was kind of masking it with my business, was that I was spending a lot of my free time just scrolling. And if you are like me at all, I tend to take on a lot of the energy of everything around me. It's why I'm so good at the work I do in the world. It's why I hold such beautiful space for my clients. But now you think of that client navigating and holding space for clients, navigating and holding space for myself and my business. And then on top of that, constantly being inundated and consuming information, energy, all of the things through social media. The big word out there right now is the doom scrolling. And the reality is, there is a lot going on in this world right now. There's a lot going on in this world right now. Some really big, heavy things, and a lot of conversations with clients and friends and family members around those heavy things and how it's impacting people differently. And I found that I had been using my business almost like an excuse or a crutch to be on my phone so much. I hold pretty good boundaries of being in my app with my clients where I coach them. Even that was becoming a little bit of a slippery slope. I could find myself like hopping in there more and more at night because I was excited to like read what they had sent me in the latest. And this is something that I remind my clients of often is like even really big, exciting things can still deplete us and exhaust us. It's not just the overwhelm and negativity that depletes us. It's anything that gets us amped that can then also fatigue us and tire us out. And so between that and then scrolling a lot on social media, quote unquote, for my business to engage and to build relationships and to check in on people. But really, what was happening was this slippery slope of just like constant consumption. And one of the things that my coach and I have been talking a lot about, and I think I've shared this a little on social media, is leaning into this idea of creation over consumption. I need to be creating more than I consume. It's part of who I am. It's a part of what I believe in, creativity and play and building and growing and all the things. And so, long story short, last week I took all of the apps off my phone. I made sure I was on my laptop. So during my work block hours, I was still getting in and responding to messages and checking on things, but I wasn't like in my stories actively as much. And here's a couple things that I noticed. As a business owner who markets, first thing, as a business owner who markets and does a lot of their um, storytelling on social media, I didn't realize how consumed I was by the idea of in my day-to-day living of like, oh, I should take a picture of that while it was happening so I could put it on social. And when I got off of the apps during the day and couldn't share that stuff as easily, I would find myself having these moments with Riley or working on a project or whatever where I was like, oh, I should take a picture of this and put up in my stories now. And I would stop myself. It's like, well, I don't have my stories right now, so I don't really need to do that. And I can still take a picture and leave it in my phone. So I didn't realize how much that had kind of like added to that energetic overload. Um, the other big thing that I noticed was, so the second thing that I noticed was that I didn't realize how much I went to pick up my phone during the day and at night too. The day was a little less because like I'm busy, I'm on calls with clients, I'm working in the business, I'm outside gardening, whatever it was. But at night, like sitting on the couch in the evening watching a show with, my partner and he and I are chit-chatting, like I would catch myself like every 30 seconds going to like look at my phone. And last week I didn't really have anything to look at, so I would just be like, "Oh, okay, just put it back down or put it over on the other side of the room." And so that was another observation that I made. And the third thing I noticed was how quickly my energy shifted throughout the week. I would say I started this on Monday. I would say by Wednesday, Monday was a little bit of anxiety around releasing it. Tuesday was still some of that and a lot of like picking it up and putting it down. By Wednesday, I could feel a markedly different level of like anxiety or um, heightened nervous system. I could feel how much lower that was. I could feel how much more reduced that was. And by Friday, I could feel like this different level of clarity. And I could also feel myself being drawn back to the things that actually bring me joy in these little pockets of time. I talk a lot online about the power of play and creativity, and I use them both as very big tools in my business when I'm working with leaders and business owners and executives when we are caught up in those overthinking traps and all of that, that they are tools to help us disconnect from that. But I had found myself kind of disconnected and disinterested in a lot of the other things that normally bring me joy. And it was because so much of my mental capacity and energy was being consumed by the consumption online. And I mean, folks, this is not my area of expertise. I'm sharing a personal anecdotal story of this, which I've now had lots of other conversations with other people around it. But there is a lot of research coming out about this now, especially for those of us, I'm of the era of I was in that group of people who were the very first year on Facebook in college. If you don't remember this or weren't around back then or whatever, weren't on social media then, Facebook started as a private thing for college students. You could only get on if you had a college email address from and it was only specific colleges and universities. And so this is like in the early 2000s. That was how you accessed it. And then you could only friend people from your college. My first year, it was only people that I was in college with or who had just recently graduated that I could like be in this little networking social Facebook group with. And it's evolved so much, but it's just fascinating to see how now, 20 years later, we are just starting to get the research on how this consumption uh, can change our brains, can change our nervous system, all of the things. And I think there's still so much more to come on that as things shift and our relationships to things shift. And so I wanted to share this story and some of the observations that I made immediately. But I also wanted to go bigger picture with this because what I don't want to do and what I have no interest of doing or can't do in my business or don't, yeah, have no interest of doing in my business is I don't want to downplay the fact that social media is a tool. It's a great tool when we let it be a tool. I went this morning to a in-person networking event for business owners and yeah, local business owners. And that's one of the things that I am exploring and committing to as I step back in how I operate on social media, really pushing and leaning into more in-person community and connection. It's such a big part of who I am. It's such a has been such a big missing piece for me, I think, not so much personally, but professionally. And so just looking at seeking out some of those opportunities more. And I was chatting with them and some of the women in the room, and I would say of all the women that I met today, it was all women today at this particular event. I was the only one that had a true online business. Most of the other women that were there had much more activity in the local community, whether they were brick and mortar or not. It was all kind of geographically located and based for the most part. And I got a question from someone when I said, "Oh yeah, I'm a predominantly online business. I do offer some in-person things for my clients, but I'm really looking at expanding more locally as well and building connections and community and all that." And she was like, "Well, how do people find you? And it's so interesting to me because I'm so immersed, as many of you are as my listeners, in like my online business world. Even though I coach so many clients who are brick and mortar, I think it's easy to get caught up in that idea that like online and social media is the only way, when people in this room had the complete opposite experience, that, being local and in those community spaces is the only way. And the reality is that both sides, both of these kind of quote unquote extreme experiences could learn from each other, right? Us in the online business world can really lean in and learn more from the stereotypical standard marketing, community building, networking. And I think people who operate more in that local community could take a lot from that online business world. And so it really just got me percolating on this idea that it's not about being social media being negative or bad or anything. It's about the relationship that I want to have with it as a tool in my business. And I want to come in and talk about that a bit today because I think that so many of you can relate. I know I've been having conversations with this about with clients. I've been having a lot of conversations with this with colleagues around what part we want that online business world to play in our larger businesses. And if you follow me on social media last week, so we're talking at time of recording, I'm recording March, first week of March. I put up a post talking about my relationship with a morning routine and how I had stayed away from that for so long because I had negative connotation to that because of other past experiences. And I think that this really falls in line with that same concept. It's not about something being good or bad or too much or too little. It's about the relationship that we create with it and how we strategize and use it in our businesses. And I know for me, that's shifting in this current season of life and business. I think we're seeing a shift across a lot of the platforms and industries. I think that there are people that and have all benefited from being able to connect with people all over the world that we may not have historically. And I think people are also really craving in person. And so that's been a little bit of my journey. It's been really interesting. It's only a week in. I already am playing around with some different ways to set some boundaries around that, of like having a device just in my office that has the apps on it. Because the reality is, it is hard to get on and share and engage on my laptop sometimes. So how can I keep those boundaries for myself? In week 2 right now, I've been just deleting the apps from my phone at the end of the day, before going into family and home mode. And just little shifts like that have made such a difference. I am excited in a couple months to kind of maybe do a catch-up episode or share some case studies out with of clients who are playing with some similar ideas. I would love to hear from you if this is something that you've been overwhelmed by or struggling with, whether you drop a comment on my social media, shoot me an email, whatever that looks like. You can find me at the Kate Finn on Instagram, or my website is just katefinn.com. I would love to hear from you and hear if this resonated or if this is something that you're struggling with. And maybe we can brainstorm some ways for you to put some of those same boundaries up in your business and for yourself.